Let's take out our Bibles.
Hey.
Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians 5, we'll start there tonight. I'm going to do a quick recap of what we have studied so far in these three topics. And we might make some application, depending on how the time goes today. So far we've talked about precepts. That's a pretty easy one to figure out. Precepts, that's thou shalt not. What the Bible says very clearly is right and wrong. So there's no guesswork about that one, no applying Bible verses. Well, precepts are very easy to figure out. But then there's the principles where we apply verses to our current situations. Certain verses we apply. It doesn't say specifically what the situation is, but there's verses, general verses, that talk about how we should behave ourselves and what we should do, should not do, and then we apply them to different personal situations we go through. And those are the principles. And on that first page where it says precepts, principles, and preferences, and you see number 1, precepts, and number 2, about halfway down the page, you see principles in big bold print. And then the definition of a Bible or biblical principle. Whereas a precept decrees a definite action or prohibition, a principle delivers a guiding policy which can then be applied to non-specific situations. In other words, your different decisions you make in your life. And then on the second page, we had different areas, different ways that we need to apply the principles. And some of the principles that need to be applied. Principles that need to be applied. Now we're going to talk about preferences tonight too, some. But let me just quickly read from Ephesians chapter 5. And we'll begin reading verse number 1. Verse number 1 there. And these thoughts here are really like applying principles. In Ephesians chapter 5 here, beginning verse 1, talking about situations in the world, talking about before people were saved, after they're saved, and the differences. But a lot of these are some principles that can be applied. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 1 says, "Be ye therefore followers of God as dear children." Not even just children, but dear children. Because we're dear to God. God loves us. Amen. We're dear to God. And then verse 2 said, "And walk in love." Now that's a principle. Walk in love towards other people. Walk with the right kind of attitude towards them. Walk in love. As Christ also had loved us. That's a pretty strong example there. As Christ did. And had given himself for an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling savor. But now fornication. Now that's a precept. Thou shalt not commit adultery. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness. See, some things fall under the category of covetousness. That's applying a principle. If it's something that people want because they're covet, although also it's a precept too, isn't it? Yeah. What's the 10th commandment? Yeah. Thou shalt not covet. Covetousness, let it not be once named among you as becometh saints. So we should be becoming saints, and that means being attractive as a saint. Then verse 4, neither filthiness, that's any kind of general rude, crude behavior, or language. You know, people use kind of foul language. They might not use the Lord's name or God's name, but they'll use some foul, referring to some foul things, won't they? That's just plain old filthiness. That's just filthiness. Nor foolish talking, nor jesting. Now, it's talking about not about just kidding with somebody, but talking about really getting at a person in a serious way. Jesting which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks. So the opposite of being thankful. If you're thankful, don't do these other things. And then verse 5, for this ye know that no whoremonger, nor unclean person, nor covetous man, who is an idolater, hath any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Yeah, there it is. Pretty clear, isn't that? Pretty clear. Verse 6, let no man deceive you with vain words, for because of these things cometh the wrath of God upon the children of disobedience. There's a difference. Christians have obedience. They're obedient to the Lord. Not sinless perfection, but obedience. But they're out there, they're called the children of disobedience. Verse 7. Be not ye therefore partakers with them. There's the yoke, being not yoked together with someone like that. They're partakers with them. Don't get involved in those things. This weekend, Memorial Day weekend, you want to go out and have some celebrate and do a memorial service or attend some of these things. But the way Christians celebrate is a lot different from the way the world celebrates. Who's happier? Who has a greater joy? The joy that lasts longer.
Yep.
Therefore, be not ye therefore partakers with them. Now verse 8. For ye were sometimes darkness. Yeah, before we were saved. But now are ye light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. Live your life so different from the way the world does. Verse 9. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is acceptable unto the Lord, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness. All right, there's a principle. Verse 11, a very clear, very strong principle. Have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness. Now, like I said last week, the Bible talks about, Paul talked about it individually. You can't leave this world either. We're not supposed to. We need to be light and salt. And living up in the mountaintop, that's not a good place to take your light and salt. That's not where it's needed. Your light, your salt needs to be needed in this world, where you live, where you work, your own families probably too. So have no fellowship, though, with the unfruitful works of darkness. We're going to celebrate or have a memorial, think about things in our country past, but not like the world does. Now, the last part of verse 11, look at the last 1, 2, 3, 4 words. First of all, we're not to be a part of that, but then the last part says something even stronger.
Yep.
But reprove them. Not only don't do what they do, but let them know what they're doing is wrong.
Amen.
Now that's where it gets a little tough, doesn't it? That's where you just might make somebody upset with you. That's where there's going to be friction between you and other people sometimes. Now we don't go around with a chip on our shoulder. We speak the truth, but in love. You know, it's interesting. We can have the best intentions, and we can really care about people. We need to be concerned about people. But even with the best intentions and a love in our hearts, they still might get angry with us. Who was that true of that lived in this world about 2,000 years ago? Absolute, complete love. What he did for us, and yet people, hated him. Now, some liked him to a degree, because he might have healed one of them, but for the most part, crucify him. Crucify him. Oh, but rather reprove them. Don't leave that last part of verse 11 out either. There needs to be that reproving at times. Now, again, in the right way, speaking the truth in love. Now verse 12. For it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret. Some things you don't even want to talk about it so bad. Verse 13. But all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light. The light that we have, the light that God is. It reveals the darkness. It shows the darkness up for what it is. We have in our house, in our bedroom, the main light, when you first walk in the bedroom doorway, there's a light switch on the right, you turn it on, nothing happens. So we're going to have to get that fixed. Carol went to a dollar store. She got one of these little, for $1, it's a little thing that lights up. It has a switch on it, and it kind of gives a little light. I hate it. I think, why waste the energy turning on the switch because there's so little light comes out of that. I want the real thing working again. I want the real light to be able to go on again. We won't get that fixed, of course. I kind of like that, too. I want the real light going on, you know? I want the real light. All right, so let's see. Verse 13, where were we now? Yeah, verse 13. But all things that are reproved are made manifest by the light. For whatsoever doth make manifest is light. Wherefore he said, Awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. There's the invitation to everybody, isn't it? Verse 15. See then that ye walk circumspectly, That means carefully, kind of looking around where you're going so you don't step on any landmines. Be careful you don't walk into any spiritual landmines. Walk circumspectly, carefully. Watch every step that you take. Watch every place that you go. Watch everything that you do. Walk circumspectly. Be aware of danger. Not as fools, but as wise. Redeeming the time, because the days are evil. And then the last verse, verse 17. Wherefore, be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. Backing up to verse 16 again, verse 16. Redeeming the time. That's one of the principles we're going to talk about tonight. The time. Redeeming the time. Make decisions applying time, the time principle, and the importance of time, and the time that you spend. Redeeming the time. Consider time in applying. That's a principle to apply. Time, because the days are evil. I heard that verse recently again. It was on the radio talking about... No, I was looking back to my old notes. That's what it was. The place in the Old Testament talked about the place Christians should be. The place, talking about that God would choose the place to go, the place to worship. And you're in the right place tonight. Amen. So places matter. Where you are, where you go matters, because those are places. Places. It's real interesting. Okay, so several of those verses there apply. Now let's take out our notes again, if you would. Again, the first page, the main one, precepts, principles, and preferences. Precepts, the thou shalt not, specific applications. Number 2, principles, where there's general statements made, and you apply them to your decisions. You apply them. And on the first page, on the second side, the back side, at the bottom, so first page, back side, at the bottom where it says problems. Here's some of the problems. Number 1, when people don't understand which is a principle, precept, or preference. The Pharisees had a problem with this, and Christians can too. Sometimes we think something is a principle when it's really just a preference, or the other way around. Some people think it's a preference when it really is a principle, or even a precept sometimes too. Know the difference. Know the difference. Number 2, another problem. The cause for concern is that someone's preferences have risen to a stature of a precept, or the Bible principle has been relegated or lowered to the level of a preference. I don't give a lot of specific illustrations. We're going to talk about that here in a minute, a couple, but I'm afraid to kind of give specifics because I want to teach you the general things about, again, precepts, principles, and preferences. So you can make the application too. Because sometimes everybody doesn't quite understand things the same way. So a principle has been relegated or lowered to the level of preference. So it's not a preference, that's a principle. You prefer to go to an independent fundamental Bible-believing Baptist church. That's really not a preference. It should be a principle. You need to go to church where they believe the right things and have the right doctrines. That's important. That's not just a preference. Where I prefer this kind of church. You know, when people apply their preferences in this kind of area, usually they'll pick a church that lets them do whatever they want to do anyway. They won't go to a church that has precepts. They won't go to a church that applies principles. Number 3, sometimes precepts, principles, and preferences are separated only by degrees. Like time, using the time, applying the principle of time. It's okay to have, I think, a little hobby or something you enjoy doing, but if you spend too much time on it, then it becomes a problem. You know, enjoying some things, I enjoy a few things where I kind of cause me to relax a little bit, and but if I would spend too much time on it, so it becomes a question of time. Are you spending too much time on something? You spend too much time, I don't know, just all kind of ways that can be. You spend too much money on some things. There's another good one. I was going to use the Bible example about someone who bought a motorcycle, and it was going to be a big motorcycle, expensive motorcycle, and he really wanted motorcycles. He loves motorcycles, and he he researched and looked into, well, he had the money to buy it. It wasn't, by the way, this was not anybody from our church. It was somebody else. And he bought the motorcycle, but he had not thought about the expense. The expense of the insurance. He didn't think about how much insurance it would cost to insure him on this big old motorcycle. And that turned out to be a pretty big bill, the insurance. So he was almost realized he thought he made a mistake there. He wouldn't have bought it if he realized how much we spent on the insurance. So again, sometimes it's separation of money. You can spend some things on things that are just a preference of money, but you spend too much on it, and then it becomes wrong after that. You can spend too much time, too much money on something. You can spend too much love on something. You know, the Bible talks about different things to love. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Right. So we can love some things in this world too much. Now, the Christian should love things. You should love your family, absolutely. But in your life, if it comes a time to make a decision in your life where you have to choose one love over another love. Yeah. One thing you love over something else you love. If it's of the Lord, He ought to have first place in your list of things that you love. Amen. The Lord should be number one. That's right. Head of family. Family's a good thing. You need to love your family, absolutely. But love the Lord the most. Even more than your family. As much as you love your family. I remember reading the stories. I should have brought an example of it. But back in the days when a lot of Christians were being martyred in the early church time there, they were trying to convince people to turn from their faith and deny Christ and deny their God, and they wouldn't do it knowing that it would cause their death. Sometimes what they would do to try to convince them to compromise and to deny their God, deny the Lord, they'd bring their family there, and their family would plead with them. Don't do this. We want you in our lives. We want you here. We don't want them to kill you, take your life. Just deny the Lord. Just, you turn your back. Just deny Him. And their family would be, their wives would be pleading with them. Their kids would be, Daddy, don't do this. We want you to come home with us. Can you imagine how hard that would be? Your own family? And yet many of these martyrs, I don't know if they all, decided that, but the ones they talked about, the ones I read about, they went to their martyr's death with their own family pleading with them not to do that. Isn't that difficult? You talk about a rough situation. So degrees, separate only by degrees. You need to love your kids. You need to love your mates if you're married, a husband or wife you're married to. You need to love your family. You need to love your family. But you need to love the Lord the most. Love the Lord the most. Even more than you love your family. As much as you love your family, you need to love the Lord more than your family. And remember, you heard it there first. There will come times in your life when the Lord will allow that kind of situation where you have to make that choice. Right. Yep. He'll allow those kind of situations because He wants you to prove your love for Him in that way, that you'll choose Him even over your own families. Number 4, another problem. When one preference clashes with another's preference, for the sake of good order, the one in position of authority, could be like in a church, a pastor, or a husband or parent, at schools, a teacher, must prevail. You know what happens in churches? There's one person with a preference for one thing, preference. We're not talking about precepts or principles here, we're talking about preferences. Just things the way you'd like to do things. There's one has a preference for this, another has a preference for that. That is conflict. That is conflict in the church. Well, I want the walls colored cream colored, like we have here in our church auditorium. Guess who decided that? Others said, I want the walls of the church to be green. Now, is that a precept? Whether you paint the walls of your church cream, or you paint the walls of your church green, is that a precept? No. It's not in the Bible. Precept, thou shalt paint your Sabbath walls, your auditorium or sanctuary walls cream or green. Is that a principle? Is there something wrong with having cream-colored walls? Is something wrong with having green-colored walls? No. So it's a preference. You know, my dad, it was, I don't know, of course, he's passed away, man. He died in 1998. So he's been gone a number of years already. But towards the end of his life, he was living home. I think Mom was still alive, but he wanted to buy a new car. And he went out and bought a new car. Didn't tell anybody. And he said, you know, if you tell somebody you're going to go buy a car, everybody has their opinion. Now, if he would have asked me what kind of car to get, I would have told him, hey, you ought to buy a Jaguar. Because then the number one son can borrow it once in a while and drive it, you know. But he went out and bought a Ford Taurus, which is a decent car, just the middle of the car, but a new one. But he didn't ask anybody, didn't talk to anybody about it, just went out and bought the car. At first I was thinking, oh, that's not good. He should ask us about it, you know, what we thought about it too, or ask other people. He said, my dad had a lot of wisdom on things. He said, you know, if you ask people, everybody has an opinion. You ask another person, they have their opinion. You ask another person, they have their opinion. He said, I didn't want to go through all that rigmarole, all that, but tell me what I should do, giving me their ideas and their preferences about things. I just went out and bought the car that I wanted to buy. Good. End of story. And I thought, you know, there's wisdom in that. Because you talk, everybody's got an idea. Well, let's do this instead. Let's do it this way instead. Let's put the offering basket. We won't have offerings anymore. We'll put the offering basket in the back of the church there. Put a box that people can put their money in the offering box in the back. Let's not have services at 10:30. Let's start Sunday school at 10 o'clock. And then we'll have a morning service at 11 o'clock. We can still do that. Or let's have Sunday night service not at 7 o'clock. Let's have them at 7:30 like we did in Key West, Florida. Or let's have them like 6 o'clock like a lot of people do. Those are all preferences. They're all, and everybody has to give their opinion. Like my poor dad, and I shouldn't say poor dad, wise dad, where he just avoided all that. He just went without telling anybody. He just went out and bought the car he wanted, without getting everybody's idea and opinion about it. And I thought, you know, there's some wisdom in that, which I did not use in the early years of our church. We're going to put when we first got in here, there was not the nursery area in that restroom, the ladies' restroom we have there now. And so I thought, well, we got to have some better restrooms. So we did all that. And then we had to decide the carpeting for the nursery. Oh, I got some samples, like 5 or 6. I knew the one I wanted to put it there. I knew the color carpeting they wanted. Of these 5 or 6, I knew the one I wanted. And as a young, inexperienced, somewhat foolish pastor, I brought all the different carpet styles here, and people, I said, well, look over, see what you think. Preference, 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 preference. It's not that important. So the one I liked, the first person went up and they said, no, I don't like this one, and tossed it aside. That was the one I liked. By the way, just ask you tonight, guess which carpeting we have in the nursery. In fact, I have a different one. I think that's actually the second one. The one I wanted. So preferences can cause problems. Preferences. Going back to the notes there, number 4 again. When one preference, or what one person prefers, clashes with another preference, what another person prefers, that's where the problems come up. In a church, in homes, all kinds of different situations. When one preference clashes with another person's preference, for the sake of good order, it has to be decided somehow. For the sake of good order, the one in position of authority in our church, it's the pastor. At home, to be the husband or the parent. In schools, it's the teacher. The one in position of authority must prevail then. They have to make the decision. So that's a problem, though. Preference versus preference. Number 5. Now, another problem. When people don't seriously consider these differences, they are important. They are important. All right, now let's go back to, or go to the next page, the second page. Yeah, everybody's got their preferences. Oh, my. Okay. On that second page, the supplemental study notes there, biblical examples, where's a precept, talked about that already. All right, questions to ask in deciding application of principles. We went through most of these last week, so I'm just going to breeze through real quick up to about number 11. We didn't cover number 11 yet, and further. But number 1, when you're making decisions, applying principles, was it offensive to the brethren in the wrong way? Just the gospel is offensive, but it's offensive to the brethren in the wrong way, where you don't have to be offensive. You don't have to be offensive, but a person chooses to do so, or they do so, and offends. If you can avoid it, don't be offensive. Number 2, does the appearance seem right, proper in the sight of all men? Would anyone look at that and say, well, that was a good choice, that was good? Number 3, would it bring about being yoked together? It's more than just working together on the job, but it means where you're together with somebody, you have to share things, you have to share your time, you have to share maybe your money. But the yoking is more than just a friendship, right? More than just working at the same place together, but being yoked together. Number 4, the spiritual condition, when it causes the weaker brethren to stumble. So be careful how you handle yourself, and you decide things sometimes so as not to offend the weaker brethren. Now, how do you know if somebody is the weaker brethren? It's because they're easily offended. That's one of the reasons. But be careful you don't stumble them. People say, well, I thought this was a friendly church. I thought this, that, the other thing. I thought he was a nice person. I thought she was a nice Christian lady. And then things happen, you say things and things happen, and it causes them to think, boy, there's problems. And they become discouraged. I guess that's a good word for it, discouraged. All right, number 5 would bring about a peaceful solution. Follow after the things which make for peace. Conversations are like little fires, and some people you have to follow around with a fire extinguisher. Amen. Number 6, would it defraud or cheat somebody out of something? Cheat him out of course, the first thing you think about is money. Cheat him out of some money. Cheat him out of some time. Cheat him out of some affection. Number 7, would it hurt your personal Christian testimony? Would people not look to you with respect anymore? Remember the Apostle Paul writing to Timothy, being a young man in the Lord, and how to have the respect of the older people. Paul instructed young Timothy how to behave, how to act, so that he would have the respect of the older Christians in that church too. Christian testimony, don't let it hurt your testimony. Number 8, is the motive unselfish? Why? Why do you need to do that? Why do you need to have that? Why do you need to have it done that way? Is the motive unselfish and correct? Meaning that nothing done through strife or vainglory. Number 9, would it dishonor the Lord in some way? Because we are His children. Number 10, is there a motive of pride? Similar to number 8. Number 11, would or could others question the morality or honesty? Is there an appearance of evil? You need to be careful in this area to do what's right. If it appears wrong, be willing to even give it up for that reason. Of course, the most familiar verse with this one is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 22. First Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 22. Notice the first word there. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 22. The first word there is abstain. Abstain means have nothing to do with it. Abstain from all appearance of evil. If it looks wrong, don't do that. If it looks wrong, don't do it. So if it looks wrong, the appearances of things. The appearances of things. Number 12. Would it in some way hinder, weaken, or somehow cause doubt about Christ's gospel? In other words, preaching one thing but living a different way. Living contrary to what you say the gospel is, and living contrary to what you say that the gospel, how the gospel changes people. The change after person's saved. Is there a change there? You say one thing, here, Christianity does this, we're able to have victory over our sin, but you practice some kind of sin. There's something wrong there. People look at that and say, well, if that's the gospel, I can be like that. You know, if he's a Christian, then I'm a Christian too, because we do the same things.
Yeah, good.
See, the gospel Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things, notice that. Behold, all things are become new. There's going to be a change. So live according to your testimony. Live according to your witnessing. Now we're down to number 13. Does it involve the proper use of money or finances? There's a couple quick, good verses here. I guess since we're in 1 Thessalonians, just turn forward a couple pages to 1 Timothy. These also are very well-known verses, but some of the most well-known verses are some of the most well-needed verses too. 1 Timothy chapter 6, beginning verse 9. Now, does it involve the proper use of money or finances? There's the battle for first place financially in a person's life too. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 9 says, but they that will be rich, and again, I always bring up that it says will be rich, not those who are rich. Although it will apply to them too. But those who want to be rich. You want to be rich? But they that will be rich fall into temptation and snare. Not those that are rich, those who want to be rich. Fall into temptation and snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil, loving the money, which while some covet after, they have erred from the faith. You mean money can cause a person to stay lost? You mean money can cause a person not to get saved? It can. For what shall a profit man shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? They have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Does money bring sorrows in people's lives? Oh yeah. Money. So when you're making decisions, consider the monetary subject. Consider, is this going to be a wise thing financially? Some people sometimes want to spend money on things they really don't need.
Yeah.
People spend money they don't have to buy things they don't need to impress people they don't like. That old saying I have. Remember one time this is years ago in our church, where it was a Sunday night. We had a few testimonies here on Sunday night. And one lady got up, she says, I was looking at this one diamond ring, and it's a ring, and I liked it a lot. Then I asked her how much is it? I asked her, how much is it? And they told her, $10,000. And I went, wow. I said, how many did you buy? And like tonight, hardly anybody laughed, but that was clever. But everybody's, do you need a $10,000 ring? That would a $1,000 ring be enough? Or maybe not even that, well, whatever. Now, some people have more money than others. They want to do that, that's fine. But consider the money subject too. Always consider that. Or finances. In making your decisions, consider finances. Consider the money. That's one thing that needs to be applied. Number 14. Would it be a wise use or waste of time? We talked about that. Redeeming the time. Redeeming the time just simply means don't waste time.
Good.
Don't waste the time. You're running out of time. As noted earlier tonight already. This year is already just about half over.
Yeah.
June's coming up already. End of June will be half a year's over already. Consider time. Put first in your life what is most important in time.
Good.
In time. Would be wise use or a waste of time. Number 15. Consider if it's just a worldly extravagance. Like the one man said, the reason I'm so poor is my neighbors keep buying things I can't afford. Keeping up with our neighbors. Consider it's just a worldly extravagance. You really need $1 million house. I've seen that. I've seen a couple of those programs. I just shake my head. I don't watch TV that much, but I watch that a little bit. Here's a house for $1.5 million. What does anybody need that? Think of the heating bill itself.
Yeah.
The electric bill. Who needs that big of a house?
Right.
Now, praise the Lord, we can have nice houses, and there's nothing wrong with that, but do we really need a house that's costs $1.5 million? I don't think so. I sure don't. You're not going to take it, move it into heaven with you when you leave this world. Use your money in the right way. Use your time in the right way. be careful of worldly extravagances. I don't think air conditioning is an extravagance in our church. I think it's a preference. We don't need to have it, but don't we like it? See, I know what every one of you think, yeah, I like it. I'm glad we have air conditioning in our church. But worldly extravagance, something that's a necessity versus something that's just a worldly excess. And then number 16 here, would it be a temptation to you personally? Now here's the thing. Some people can do certain things. It's not a temptation. They can handle it. They do it just right. They're not out of balance on it too much, But some people, it's a personal temptation, a stronger personal temptation for them than for others. Like I am not tempted to ever drink alcohol. I'm not tempted at all. Even before I got saved, I drank, like a lot of people do. But I never drank, or rarely drank to get drunk. But some of my friends did. When we were around one place, they went out just about every night, and they just went to bars. I think that doesn't, even back then, that doesn't sound good. They're going to have a problem with this alcohol thing. So is it a temptation to you personally? Now, by the way, I don't have any alcohol at home. Like even before I was saved, I didn't drink that much. Even before I was saved, and after I was saved, I knew that was wrong. So temptation to you personally. Some things are going to affect you, be a temptation to you, or they're not a temptation to someone else. Understand there's differences there. There's differences in the way our makeup is. I have Luke 21 verse 34, and I can't remember why I put that down, but let's look it up and find out why I put that down. Luke 21 verse 34. Oh yeah. The main verse here, Luke chapter 21 verse 34 says, and take heed to yourselves. Take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, so that day come upon you unawares. For as a snare shall it come upon all them that dwell in the face of the earth. Talking generally about lost people, but applying it personally to our lives. The temptation to you personally. You can be tempted with something that someone else is not tempted by. Now, some people, maybe they wouldn't have a problem with alcohol if they took another drink of anything, but I wouldn't. But I'm not going to either, because I really don't care for it at all. But it's not a spiritual temptation to me, but for some people it would be. Some people it is. Stay away from your spiritual Achilles heel. I think you know what that means. Especially stay away from those things that are a personal temptation to you. They might not be to anybody else, but maybe to you especially. One missionary here worked, in fact, he worked for the Rock of Ages prison ministry. I'll tell you who it is too. Alan Combs. Now he passed away, went to heaven, but really good Rock of Ages. And I think he had a problem with some kind of addiction before he was saved and everything, alcohol. And after he was saved, he would not go to any restaurant that served alcohol at all. He wanted to just stay away from it. Personal kind of thought about that, a conviction about that he had, and I respected that. At that time, Fanny's Restaurant was still open there on East 156, I think it is. Fanny's Restaurant still open. We used to go there quite a bit. And he was here during the week. We had some kind of revival going on, or maybe guest missionaries in. And he came here early. We're going to go to Fanny's Restaurant there and could come back for the service. And I said, well, come on, we're going to a restaurant. You want to go with us? And he didn't say anything. And then I said, you don't have to worry. It's a family restaurant. They do not serve alcohol or have alcohol at all at Fanny's Restaurant. And then he went along with us. I knew that was his thing. He didn't want to, maybe it was because the appearance of evil, maybe that, or maybe he just vowed to the Lord he wasn't going to go to any restaurant that served alcohol, or maybe he did have a problem with it, where it would have been a temptation to him, whereas it wouldn't be to someone else. So I don't know exactly why that was, but I thought that was interesting, and I respected him for that. I respected him for that stand that he took there. But when I told him that they don't have alcohol there, the sad thing, after a number of years, they did start to have alcohol there, even at Fanny's Restaurant. But I was so disappointed. start doing that. But anyways, okay. Okay, it's 5 after. I should quit. I'm going to go on just a couple minutes. Let's apply some of these. A couple weeks ago, I read that long list, all the different things I heard about over the years that some people thought was wrong, some didn't think was wrong, and some were wrong, and some weren't necessarily wrong. And let's see, apply this. Are they precepts? Are they principles? Or are they preferences? Watching TV. It depends on what you watch. If our church is ever on television, it'd be all right to watch our church on television. It depends on what you watch, but watching TV, you have to be careful about that. Okay, what about astrology? Which is it, a precept, principle, or a preference? That's a precept. Because the Bible talks about, in fact, they even mentions, I think, astrology. It doesn't say the word specifically, yeah. That's a precept. Don't have anything to do with astrology. This one. Working on Sundays. Now remember this, what day of the week is the Sabbath? Saturday. So working on Sunday is not a precept. Is it a principle? Yeah. I think some people apply it in that way, yes. It can also, it should be more than a preference. Right. So let's put another principle there. But I know that people have to work sometimes on Sundays, they can't make every service. And all the years I've seen that, I've seen the people, they wrestle with that. They don't like working on Sundays, but sometimes they'll have to. I think that's okay. I don't personally find a problem with that. As long as they're, here's the thing. If they miss other services, do they have other excuses for that? Here's another thing. If they did not have to work, would they be in church? Good. Amen. There's the real test right there. Amen. If they didn't work, would they still be at church? See, some things aren't all that easy. Huh? How about shopping on Sundays? Can't say I don't do that. How about going to restaurants on Sundays? Remember, it's not the Sabbath. It's not the Sabbath. But that's something that there might be some different opinion there. How about drinking wine in moderation? Yeah, that'd be a principle there. Your physical body is involved, that'd be a principle. Yeah. And again, there's other things brought up there too. How about cooking with wine? Because when you cook with it, the alcohol content is gone. I guess. So I think it'd be a preference. You know, I wouldn't have glass bottles at my house that looked like wine bottles. Good. That even looked like it. Amen. You know, that's the appearance of people. I wouldn't even do that. Oh, there's all kinds of. What about Halloween? Precept, principle, or preference? Halloween. Precept. Yeah. Don't have anything to do with the cultish things. Well, there's a lot of them. They can be seen a little differently too. Buying insurance. That's a preference. Because we're sharing somebody else's burden, their financial burden, they get sick or something. I don't see a problem with that. But anyway, see, all these are going to bring up some different thoughts. And people can see a little differently on many of those. But anyways, you understand now today what we're talking about. Precepts, thou shalt not, thou shalt. Things very clearly brought in the Bible. There's no denying it, no debating it. Principles are ways to apply to our specific situations. If they're right or wrong, or what we should do or what we should not do. Principles are applied there. And then preferences are preferences, whether we want cream-colored walls in the sanctuary or green-colored walls in the sanctuary. There's always differences on preferences. And then you have one person's preference against another person's preference. And that's where we need to humble ourselves and say it's not important if I get what I want, but whatever things follow for peace, things which follow after peace. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for this good study. I pray, Lord, that you'll bless as we continue serving now. And Lord, give us understanding these matters so we will be right in everything in our lives in your sight. Lord, help us to submit our will to your will and your word in every way of our lives. So, Lord, thank you for this good study, interesting study, helpful. I hope it was helpful to everybody. So now dismiss us with your blessing. Thank you for our Wednesday nights here. Thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray and ask it.